Om Tyageshwaram Ramakrishnam Saradam Matrarupinim Vivekanandamacharyam Natva Vakshyami Shuddhi. We've been discussing this prema, Anirvachaniyam Prema Swarupam, that love of God which springs in the heart of a devotee. And though it is Anirvachaniya, still Narada tries to give us some idea about it. So he says, Gunarahitam Kamanarahitam Pratikshana Vardhamanam Avichinnam Sukshmatram Anubhavarupam. That is the description of this prema. We discussed this definition, how it is Gunarahita. Gunarahita, free from all the three gunas, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. The effect of the gunas are not mixed in that prema. That prema doesn't make one seek transitory pleasures. This love of God doesn't make one work unnecessarily, activity, rajas. Nor does it lead oneself to inertia or inadvertence, pramada, which is an effect of tamas. So it is free from the effects of all the three gunas. That's why it's called gunarahita. The other way to understand was, it doesn't depend on the qualities of the beloved. In worldly love, the qualities of the beloved are what attract the lover. But in this prema, the love is to the swarupa, to the person and not to the qualities. God is loved because He is our self. He is the very essence of everything. So the swarupa is loved and not the gunas. So it is gunarahitam. Kamana-rahitam means this love of God is free from desires. And by that we have to understand it is free from other emotional drives also. It is free from hatred, it is free from fear, it is free from repulsion, free from anger and all that. So in human love, invariably, human love leads to these other sentiments as well, these other drives as well. Human love makes one hate others, fear someone, or get angry at someone and all that. But this divine love, it is free from all the emotional drives. Actually, it is the, so to say, refined form of the emotional energy, psychic energy that we have. The emotional energy, the drive, basic drive that we have, it manifests in all these forms, in the raga, the attraction, dvesha, krodha and all that. It is that one energy which is manifesting. So all these are checked and refined and distilled, so to say. And the distilled form is this prema, is a love. So obviously it is kamana-rahitam. Pratikshana vardhamana means it keeps on increasing every moment. In worldly love there is rise and then there is fall. There is satiation. But in this divine prema, there is no satiation. It's every moment increasing. And it is avichinna. It is unbroken because it's increasing every moment. There is no cheda. It's avichinna. Then it was said it is sukshmam and anubhava rupam. Now we see these two, the subtlety and experiential nature of love. It is there in all love. All emotions are subtle and also experiential in nature, anubhava rupa. But even in worldly emotions we find there is gradation. There is gradation. We say he is a person of fine taste. So there is something not so fine a taste. In enjoyment, in experience, there is crude and there is fine. There is this gradation. And this love of God is, so to say, finest. That's why sukshmatra, it is finer than all the emotions that we know. In that sense, it is most refined emotion of the heart. That's how we can understand sukshmatra. And also anubhava rupam, it is experiential in nature. It's of the form of an experience. So everything is an experience. But again, there is gradation. Some person gets a good news, we see that that person is happy, we feel happy. That person is happy, we feel happy. But that experience of happiness, if we get a good news, that experience of happiness, there is so much of gradation. My happiness when I see someone happy, and my happiness when I hear some good news and I become happy, there is so much of difference. This is much more personal, much more intimate, much more nearer to me. This anubhava, both are anubhava rupa, but there is gradation. And this prema is most near to our heart. It is between us and the fact of our being, the reality of our being. So it is a most personal experience, so to say. So Anubhava Rupa and Sukshmatara, we can understand it that way. It is most refined and most personal. So that is these are the characteristics of this prema. And then next sutra he gives how it manifests. Tat prapya tadeva lokayati, tadeva shrunoti, tadeva bhashati, tadeva chintayati. For such a person, there is nothing but God, so to say. That person has tore the mask of this multiplicity. We see multiplicity. That person has tore the mask and sees only the Mother, only the God in all things and beings. There is no cause for hatred or attraction or jealousy, because that mind on its own instinctively rests on the substratum of this phenomena. We see the phenomena, we see multiplicity, but this prema makes that mind land, so to say, instinctively on that which is the substratum of this phenomena, that is God. So tadeva alokayati, sees only God. Tadeva shrunati, hears only God. It's a very lofty state where all things and beings are seen as God, and all actions happen in a spirit of dedication unto God, as a seva, service of God. And all happenings are received as God's will. Such a person won't complain because of him or her this is happening. For such a person, everything is happening by the will of God. So that is the state, and we have to understand this is not something that, okay, we do practice it. We try to see God in everything. We try to do all work in a spirit of dedication. We try to accept everything as God's will. But what we are doing is what's called bhavana. We imagine, we think. This effort leads to a state where instinctively that person sees everything and all beings as God. When that person performs work, he or she sees the feet of God as the recipient of all those actions. And in all happenings, such a person will see the hand of God. He or she doesn't have to imagine, doesn't have to impose, superimpose, there is no bhavana, there is no bhava. It is reality for such a person. So this prema is not what we call practice. It just springs in the heart and colors that person's whole being, so to say. Perceptions, actions, everything is colored by that prema. So this prema is not to be practiced. We can try to practice the effects of prema. The effects of prema, as I said, we try to see God in everything. We try to do all work in a spirit of dedication unto God, accept everything as God's will, but it is a trying. But this will lead to a state, what Narada is speaking of now, the prema. That is not a state where the devotee is trying to do all this. That trying is over. The devotee actually sees, actually feels. So that is this prema. It's a very important sutra. As I said, Ramakrishna gives the example of a river. In the initial stages, That river has a lot of force, there is not much of depth, it is shallow, curves and bends and all that. But then it reaches a point where it gathers depth and width. There is current, but it is not seen outside. So to say, it has found the groove, and it's only a question of time before it reaches the sea. So this attainment of prema is like that river which has found its groove, so to say. It's only a question of time before one reaches the sea. It is deep and wide. And this is the immediate goal of all the bhaktas. So Parabhakti is the final goal. But all our efforts, they should lead us to this attainment of prema, to the springing of prema in our heart. That is the immediate goal, and that's why this is an important sutra. In a journey, we should have, and we always have, an immediate goal. What is the next, first kind of thing? From here, where next first? So that is the immediate goal, and this attainment of prema, that is the immediate goal. All our sadhana should lead to this. That's why this is an important sutra. This prema, this is also called Mukhya Bhakti, It is called Mukhya Bhakti. See, this Narada he started with Parabhakti. There's two, Parabhakti and Aparabhakti. Supreme devotion and, so to say, non-supreme devotion. And this non-supreme devotion, he kind of makes into two stages. One is this prema or Mukhya Bhakti. And the other is Gauni Bhakti, which he will take up in the next sutra. So this Mukhya Bhakti is what we have been talking about. As you saw, it is something that springs. It is not something that is practiced. It is like that river which has reached a stage where there are no ups and downs, where there is not much of noise, so to say. It just flows towards the sea. It is our immediate goal. And all our activities are oriented towards attainment of that goal. This is compared to Jnananistha of the Jnana Yoga. This Jnananistha also is something that springs. And this prema or Mukhya Bhakti is compared to Jnananistha of the Jnana Marga. It is fragile, it is delicate, we have to understand. It needs to be protected because it is not the attainment of final goal. It is not the attainment of Parabhakti. So it is fragile. It needs to be protected. And what we are doing, we are also trying to protect. We are not trying to protect, most of us, the prema, but we are trying to protect our heart, wherein this prema will rise. See, this prema is like the sprout of the seed that we have planted in our heart. In the soil of our heart, we have planted a seed, and that will sprout as this prema. But so long as it has not sprouted, we have to be more careful, and we have to take care of the soil of heart. That is what we are doing now. We are just trying to take care of the soil of heart. The weeds should not come, and the stray animals should not trample, so to say, and destroy the seed that is sown in the soil of our heart. That is what is called Vishayatyaga Sangatyaga. Protect the soil, remove the weeds, save it from the stray cattle which will trample, so to say, on the soil of heart and make the sprouting impossible. And manure it in, water it. That is what is called Avyavratta Bhajana. So through Vishayatyaga Sangatyaga, we protect it from stray animals and weeds. And through Avyavratta Bhajana, we are watering it, we are manuring it, the seed of bhakti that we have planted. And that's what we are doing now. That is all sadhana is about. Protecting and nurturing the heart. So that one day we'll see the sprout of prema bhakti in our heart. That's why this sutra is important. It tells us what is our immediate next goal. Anyway, so having discussed these things about prema bhakti, now as I said, this is one of the apara bhaktis. Apara bhakti is split into two. One is Gauni bhakti, the other is prema bhakti. Prema bhakti is the, so to say, penultimate stage. And after this is para bhakti, which is the goal. So Narada describes Gauni bhakti also, which is what we have now. We all now are Gauna bhaktas. It's a formal devotion, so to say. So he says, Gauni tridha guna bhedat artadi bhedat va uttarasmat purva shreyaya bhavati. So this Gauni bhakti, which we have now, is threefold or of three types, tridha. What kind of three types? He says, sattva rajas tamas, guna bhedat, based on the gunas. What are the gunas? Sattva rajas tamas. There are three gunas. He says tridha, and hence the commentators say the gunas referred to here will have to be those sattva rajas tamas. Those are the three gunas. So guna bhedat, so either it is sattvika bhakti, rajasika bhakti or tamasika bhakti. Gauni tridha, guna bhedat, artadi bhedat. So artha, etc. This reference is to Bhagavad Gita, where Lord says that Chaturvidha bhajanti mam janah sakruti norjano arto jignasur artharthi jnani cha bharatarshava. So Lord refers to four types of devotees in Bhagavad Gita. And that enumeration starts with artha. Artha, jignasu, artharthi. And hence he says artha adi bhedat. So artha etc. So obvious reference to that shloka from Bhagavad Gita. So there are three types, artha bhakta and then jignasa bhakta and artharthi bhakta. So there it is about bhakta. He says bhakti. So this artha bhakti, jignasa bhakti and artharthi bhakti. These are the three types. So in two ways he has, so to say, divided the bhakti based on gunas or based on artha, etc. Based on gunas means based on the nature and manifestation and expression. Gunas are the ones that show up in the actions, show up in the conduct. So the division based on gunas is mainly division on the nature and manifestation and expression. And the division according to artha is more about division based on the purpose as to why we love God, why we worship God, the purpose behind that worship. Based on that, the division is artha, etc. Based on the nature and expression, the division is sattva, rajatama, etc. In gospel also we find Sri Ramakrishna says Sattvika Bhakta will meditate with the inside a mosquito curtain. So the persons will feel that, oh, he is still sleeping, and actually he or she is meditating inside. So there is absolutely no show in Sattvik Bhakti. Simple food, simple offering, whatever is available, absolutely no show. That is Sattvika Bhakti. And then in Rajasika Bhakti there is a lot of show, there is a lot of exhibition, so many items for worship. And Sri Ramakrishna says, person wearing a Rudraksha bead and some of them will have a sparkle of gold and all that. There is that like a king, he or she will be. So there is the Rajasika Bhakti is all about display, exhibition and all that. And Tamasika Bhakti is absolutely very crude. There is no achara, no proper chanting of mantras, no proper performance, no purity, all that. So based on the qualities inherent in the heart or predominant guna of that person, bhakti will be like that. No one is absolutely sattvika or Rajasic or tamasic. It's always a mixture. But there are shades, there are gradations. So all these three are together called Gauni Bhakti. The other way of looking at, and the commentator points out that like Sattvic Bhakta will have knowledge. Knowledge about the goal and the means and everything. The clarity will be there in Sattvic Bhakti. That is Sattvic Bhakti. Sattvic Bhakti is the one in which the Bhakta has clarity, that this is the goal and this is the way. Whereas Rajasic Bhakta is a bit confused. He or she doesn't exactly know what is the goal, what is the way, and so a lot of things he or she tries to do. This will work, otherwise that will work. So there is this confusion of Rajas, and that's why it is called Rajasika Bhakti. And Tamasika Bhakti, it is ignorance. There is neither confusion nor clarity. It is a blind adherence to certain rituals and this what they call so many incantations and all things that we see, blindly following certain things. That is Tamasika Bhakti. Absolutely no idea of the goal or the means, no confusion also, and no thought of getting clarity also. So blind following of rituals and all that. That we find such a bhakti is called Tamasika Bhakti. So all the three are bhaktis because they are centered around God. All the three are bhaktis and they will lead, one will lead to the other, no doubt. So that is one way of dividing Gauni Bhakti, Guna Bhedat, Sattvika Bhakti, Rajasika Bhakti and Tamasika Bhakti. And then he says, Artha Adibhedadva. So, Artha Jignasur Artharthi. Artha is a person who is miserable. In a simple translation would be miserable. Artha. Jignasu is curious, wants to know, and Artharthi is a person who wants something in exchange. He is kind of a greedy person. The next sutra says, Uttarasmat Purva Shreyaya Bhavati. That means the earlier one is better than the later one. That is what it says. The earlier one is better than the later one. From what standpoint is this said? Because from the standpoint of Parabhakti, then Mukhya Bhakti, and then from there, what is nearest to Mukhya Bhakti, that is better. In that sense it is said. So Sattvika Bhakti is nearest to Mukhya Bhakti. Little away is Rajasika and little away is Tamasika. So that's why earlier one is better than the later, based on their distance, so to say, from the Mukhya Bhakti. The same logic will have to apply here also. Artha Bhakti is better than Jignasa Bhakti. Jignasa Bhakti is better than Artharthi Bhakti. Based on their proximity to Mukhya Bhakti or Prema that we discussed. So, when we see that, then we understand that the Artha, some people understand it or explain it, not as just person who is miserable because of the worldly afflictions, but person who is miserable because of his or her separation from God. That is the Artata. It is more like Vyakulata than suffering or misery of the world. Person who is Artha is not miserable because of the world, but he or she is miserable because of his or her separation from God. That is the Artata, that is the Vyakulata. And when we accept this meaning, then the next sutra is easier to explain. That is, this bhakti of Vyakulata is superior to Jignasa. That is superior to the Artharthis bhakti. Like that we can explain. Alright. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.